Have you ever wondered what Jesus truly asks from a heart that longs for heaven? Have you ever feared that the path to heaven might demand more strength, perfection, or heroism than you feel capable of offering? And have you ever questioned whether your small, fragile, ordinary heart could genuinely satisfy what Jesus desires? Saint Thérèse of Lisieux answered these questions with a clarity that still disarms the soul. She revealed that Jesus does not demand greatness as the world defines it. He does not search for flawless strength, dramatic sacrifice, or visible spiritual success. What he asks is far more interior and far more accessible than most people imagine. Hook. Jesus does not demand that you climb to heaven. He asks that you let yourself be loved enough to be lifted there. Saint Thérèse of Lisieux. Subscribe if you wish to walk this little way and discover what truly draws a soul toward heaven. Saint Thérèse spent her short life discerning one essential question: what does Jesus actually desire from a heart that wants him? And her answer overturned centuries of spiritual fear. She discovered that Jesus does not demand strength. He demands trust. Not perfection, but sincerity. Not heroic deeds, but love offered in smallness. She wrote with childlike certainty, "It is trust, and nothing but trust, that must lead us to love." This sentence alone summarizes everything Jesus demands from a heart that desires heaven. Thérèse understood that heaven is not a reward for spiritual performance, but a gift given to hearts that allow themselves to be loved. And the greatest obstacle to heaven is not weakness, but the refusal to be small before God. Imagine a child standing at the bottom of a staircase far too tall to climb. The child looks up, aware of her inability. She does not pretend she can reach the top. She does not attempt to impress. She simply lifts her arms and waits to be carried. This image shaped Thérèse's entire spirituality. Jesus, she realized, does not demand that the soul climb by effort. He demands that the soul consent to dependence. This demand is quiet, gentle, almost hidden. It does not shout commandments. It whispers invitations. Jesus demands a heart that dares to say, "I cannot reach heaven by myself, so I trust you to lift me." For Thérèse, holiness was not accumulation of virtues but abandonment, not self-improvement but self-offering. She believed Jesus looks first not at what you do but at how you surrender. The smallest act, when offered with pure intention, becomes immense in his eyes. Picture Thérèse in the convent, performing unnoticed duties, washing cups, folding cloths, enduring small irritations. She offered each moment quietly to Jesus, believing that love hidden in ordinary life was exactly what he demanded. Not extraordinary suffering, not spiritual brilliance, but fidelity in the small. This is why her message is both comforting and unsettling. Comforting because heaven becomes reachable. Unsettling because pride has no place to hide. Jesus demands humility, not humiliation, but truth. The truth that you are little, the truth that you need him. The truth that love matters more than achievement. As we begin this journey, remember this: Jesus demands nothing that crushes the heart. He demands only what frees it. The first thing Jesus demands from a heart that desires heaven, according to Saint Thérèse of Lisieux, is not action. It is truth. A quiet interior truth that dismantles illusion and brings the soul into light. Before love can grow, before trust can deepen, before surrender can begin, the heart must accept one reality without fear: its own littleness. Thérèse insisted that heaven is closed not to the weak, but to the self-sufficient. She wrote with striking simplicity, "What pleases Jesus is to see me love my littleness and my poverty." This is not poetic exaggeration, it is theological precision. Jesus demands that the heart stop pretending to be strong, not because shows of strength offend him, but because they prevent intimacy. A heart that hides behind competence, discipline, or spiritual performance cannot be carried. It resists being lifted because it insists on standing. Truth, in the little way, is not self-condemnation, it is clarity. It is the courage to say, "I am small. I am limited. I cannot save myself. I need you." This truth does not push the soul downward, it opens it upward. Imagine a child standing before a loving parent, holding a broken toy. The child does not explain theories, She does not justify the damage. She simply holds it out, honestly, silently. The truth is visible, and love responds immediately. This is what Jesus demands first. Thérèse discovered that many souls desire heaven, but resist this demand. They want holiness without dependence. They want grace without need. They want heaven without humility. And so they exhaust themselves trying to climb where Jesus intends to lift. She wrote, "The elevator which must raise me to heaven is your arms, O Jesus." But an elevator only works if you step inside. The demand, then, is not effort. It is entry. Entry into humility. Entry into truth. Entry into spiritual childhood. In daily life, this demand appears quietly. It shows itself when you fail and choose not to despair. When you fall and choose not to hide. When you feel dry in prayer and choose not to pretend. When you admit weakness without shame. Jesus demands a heart that does not lie about itself, not to others, not to God, not even to itself. This honesty softens the soul. It strips away comparison, pride, fear, and performance. It creates interior space, and heaven enters only where there is space. Thérèse knew that many souls are distant from heaven, not because they sin greatly, but because they fear being small. They fear that admitting weakness will disappoint God, but she teaches the opposite. Weakness delights him when it is offered with trust. Truth becomes the doorway. Once the heart accepts its littleness, something shifts. Pressure dissolves. The need to impress disappears. The soul stops negotiating its worth, and Jesus draws near, not as a judge, but as a father. This is why truth is the first demand, because without truth, love remains theoretical. Without truth, trust remains fragile. Without truth, heaven remains distant. Once the heart accepts the truth of its littleness, Jesus makes a second inseparable demand, one that Sainte Thérèse of Lisieux considered the very engine of the spiritual life. Absolute trust. Not partial trust, not conditional trust, but a trust that dares to rest completely in God's goodness, even when nothing feels secure. Thérèse wrote with astonishing boldness, "It is trust, and nothing but trust, that must lead us to love." This was not a comforting phrase for her. It was a spiritual law. Jesus demands trust because heaven cannot be entered by fear. A fearful heart hesitates. A calculating heart delays. A suspicious heart protects itself. But a trusting heart moves freely toward God. Trust in the little way is not optimism. It is not emotional certainty. It is not the absence of doubt. Trust is the decision to place your entire weight on God's tenderness, even when you feel weak, confused, or unworthy. Imagine a small child learning to jump into a parent's arms. The child does not analyze distance. She does not measure strength. She does not calculate risk. She looks, smiles, and jumps because she trusts the arms waiting for her. This is what Jesus demands. Thérèse discovered that many souls desire heaven but remain frozen by fear. Fear of failing God, fear of displeasing Him, fear of not being enough. And fear, she insisted, is not humility. It is a hidden form of self-reliance. Fear says, I must protect myself. Trust says, God will protect me. She once wrote, I am not afraid of God, I love Him. This sentence reveals everything. Jesus demands that the heart stop interpreting Him through fear and begin interpreting Him through love. He does not ask you to feel confident. He asks you to choose trust. Trust shows itself in small ways. When you fall and do not despair. When prayer feels dry and you remain present. When you do not understand God's timing and still wait peacefully. When you fail again and return without shame. Each of these moments is a declaration. I trust you more than I trust myself. Trust lifts the soul because it removes weight. It releases the need to control outcomes, emotions, and spiritual progress. Thérèse understood that the soul grows faster when it stops measuring itself. She compared trust to an elevator, a way of being lifted effortlessly. But elevators require surrender. You must step inside, you must stop climbing. Jesus demands trust not because He is strict, but because He is gentle. He knows that without trust, the soul will exhaust itself. With trust, the soul rests, and resting is how heaven begins. Ask yourself quietly, do you approach God expecting tenderness or bracing for disappointment? Do you trust His mercy more than your weakness? Do you let yourself be carried, or are you still trying to climb? These questions are not accusations. They are invitations, because once trust enters, the heart becomes light, and a light heart rises easily. Once the heart embraces truth and learns to trust, Jesus makes a third demand, one that Saint Thérèse of Lisieux lived with radical simplicity. Love expressed in small things. Not occasional love, not dramatic love, but love woven quietly into the ordinary fabric of daily life. Thérèse discovered that heaven is not reached through extraordinary moments, but through ordinary moments loved extraordinarily. She wrote, "To pick up a pin for love can convert a soul." This was not metaphor, it was her theology. Jesus demands that love be made visible, not through greatness but through constancy. Heaven desires hearts that love when no one sees. Jesus does not ask, "How much did you do?" He asks, "How much did you love?" This demand is subtle because it touches the smallest corners of life: tone of voice, patience in interruption, gentleness under misunderstanding, fidelity in unnoticed duties. These moments reveal whether love is sincere or only theoretical. Imagine Thérèse in the convent, assigned to sit beside a sister whose habits irritated her deeply. There was no applause for this, no recognition, no visible reward. And yet Thérèse chose to smile gently, to listen patiently, to offer silent kindness. She wrote that this hidden effort cost her more than great sacrifices and delighted Jesus more. Why? Because love that is hidden is love that is pure. Jesus demands this kind of love because it reveals the heart's true orientation. Anyone can love when love is rewarded. But only a heart shaped for heaven loves without return, without recognition, without comfort. Small love purifies intention. Thérèse insisted that intention matters more than action. Washing a dish out of love matters more than grand deeds performed for admiration. Jesus demands not that you do impressive things, but that you do simple things for Him. This transforms daily life into sacred ground. Your morning routine becomes prayer. Your work becomes offering. Your patience becomes worship. Your silence becomes praise. Heaven begins quietly, exactly here. But this demand also confronts resistance. The heart often wants love to be efficient, visible, measurable. Small love feels insignificant, it feels wasted, it feels unnoticed, and that is precisely why Jesus asks for it. Because love that seeks recognition is still centered on the self. Love that accepts obscurity belongs entirely to God. Thérèse believed that heaven belongs to souls who consent to be hidden, not erased, but offered. She wrote, "I want to be love in the heart of the church, not admired, not elevated, but quietly present." Jesus demands this love because heaven itself is built on it. In heaven there is no comparison, no competition, no performance, only love given and received freely. So Jesus begins training the soul now. Ask yourself gently, how do you love when no one is watching? How do you respond in small irritations? How do you serve when there is no reward? These are not tests, they are invitations, because every small act of love is already a step toward heaven. After truth, trust, and love in small things, Jesus makes a fourth demand upon the heart that desires heaven. A demand Saint Thérèse of Lisieux guarded with great delicacy: purity of intention. This demand is quiet, interior, and easily overlooked, yet it shapes the entire spiritual life. Purity of intention means this: doing everything for God alone, not for praise, not for reassurance, not for recognition, not even for spiritual satisfaction. Thérèse understood that even good actions can lose their beauty when the heart seeks something other than God. She wrote, "I do the smallest things for love, without seeking myself in anything. This is not severity, it is freedom." Jesus demands purity of intention because heaven is a place where love is undivided. A divided heart grows tired, a pure heart grows light. Imagine two people performing the same act of kindness. Outwardly, they look identical, but inwardly one seeks approval, while the other seeks only to please God. Thérèse believed heaven leans toward the second heart, not because the act is greater, but because the love is truer. Purity of intention strips love of hidden motives. It asks hard but healing questions. Why am I doing this? Who am I trying to satisfy? What am I hoping to gain? Thérèse discovered that when intention is purified, even the smallest action becomes luminous. When intention is divided, even large sacrifices grow heavy. This is why Jesus demands simplicity of heart. Picture Thérèse folding laundry in silence. No one notices. No one thanks her. She feels no spiritual consolation, and yet she offers the act gently, inwardly whispering, "For you, Jesus." That whisper transforms the act into prayer. Purity of intention is not about constant self-examination. It is about orientation. A heart oriented toward God naturally releases the need for validation. It no longer measures success by outcomes, but by fidelity. Thérèse warned that spiritual exhaustion often comes not from doing too much, but from doing good things for mixed reasons. When love seeks reward, it grows anxious. When love seeks God, it rests. Jesus demands purity of intention because heaven itself is pure gift. Nothing there is earned, nothing is negotiated. Everything is love, freely given and freely received. This demand also protects the soul from discouragement. When you act only for God, failure loses its power. Being unnoticed no longer wounds. Results no longer define you. Your heart remains anchored. Ask yourself gently, do you feel disappointed when your good intentions go unseen? Do you lose peace when your efforts are misunderstood? Do you feel discouraged when love is not returned? These moments reveal where intention needs healing, not condemnation. Thérèse teaches that God is not harsh with divided hearts. He patiently purifies them. Each time you choose Him over yourself, intention becomes simpler. Each time you surrender recognition, the heart grows lighter. Purity of intention is not perfection, it is direction, and Jesus asks only for direction. After truth, trust, small love, and purity of intention, Jesus makes a fifth demand upon the heart that desires heaven. One Saint Thérèse of Lisieux lived quietly and heroically, perseverance in simplicity. This is the demand that sustains love when emotion fades and faith feels ordinary. Thérèse understood something many fear to accept. Love does not always feel warm. Prayer does not always console. Trust does not always feel secure. And yet, Jesus still asks the heart to remain, not with intensity, but with fidelity. She wrote with serene honesty, "I have never felt anything extraordinary. I love Him in dryness as in consolation." This sentence reveals the depth of her spirituality. Jesus does not demand constant fervor. He demands constancy. Perseverance in simplicity means continuing to love God when prayer feels flat, when emotions are quiet, when spiritual sweetness disappears. It is the decision to remain faithful without reward and without complaint. Imagine a long grey afternoon in the convent. The chapel is cold. The silence feels heavy. Thérèse kneels, distracted, tired, offering nothing but her presence. No tears, no inspiration, no joy, only fidelity. This, she believed, delighted Jesus more than moments of fervor. Why? Because love proven without feeling is love purified of self. Many souls desire heaven but become discouraged when spiritual emotion fades. They mistake dryness for failure. They interpret silence as distance. Thérèse teaches the opposite. Silence is often where trust matures. Jesus demands perseverance because heaven is eternal, and eternity is built not on fleeting feeling, but on faithful love. This demand is gentle but firm. It appears in daily life like this. You pray even when you feel nothing. You choose kindness even when it feels difficult. You trust even when answers do not come. You remain even when leaving would be easier. These choices form the backbone of holiness. Thérèse believed that the soul grows strongest when it stops depending on emotional reassurance. She insisted that love is an act of the will, sustained by grace. And grace flows most freely into hearts that remain without demanding comfort. Perseverance in simplicity is not stubbornness. It is quiet courage. It says, "I stay because I love, not because I feel. Jesus demands this perseverance because heaven is not reached through excitement, but through endurance in love. The soul that remains faithful in dryness learns to love God for who He is, not for how He makes the soul feel. Ask yourself gently, do you withdraw when prayer feels empty? Do you become discouraged when emotion fades? Do you measure closeness to God by sensation? Thérèse invites you to rest instead. Remain, stay, continue. In heaven, love will be full and overflowing. On earth, love is often quiet, unseen, and tested. Jesus asks you to accept this, not as loss, but as preparation. After perseverance in simplicity, Jesus makes a sixth demand upon the heart that desires heaven. A demand Saint Thérèse of Lisieux considered essential for spiritual freedom, unshakable confidence in God's mercy, especially in moments of weakness and failure. Thérèse was fearless in this teaching. She insisted that confidence, not perfection, is what keeps the soul moving toward heaven. She wrote with startling tenderness, "Even if I had committed all possible sins, I would still have the same confidence." This was not presumption, it was profound knowledge of God's heart. Jesus demands confidence because despair distances the soul more than sin ever could. A heart that falls and trusts draws closer to God. A heart that falls and despairs withdraws. Thérèse understood that many souls secretly fear God's reaction to their weakness. They imagine disappointment, fatigue, or rejection, and so when they fail, they retreat. They pray less, hide more, and grow silent, but Jesus demands the opposite movement. He asks the heart to run toward Him precisely when it feels least worthy. Confidence in mercy means this, believing that God's love does not fluctuate with your performance, believing that His tenderness is constant, believing that your weakness does not surprise Him. Imagine a small child who stumbles while learning to walk. The child falls and immediately looks up. If the parent smiles and opens their arms, the child runs back without fear. But if the child imagines anger, she hesitates. Thérèse teaches that God always opens His arms. She believed that Jesus delights in the soul that trusts Him more after failure than before. Why? Because such trust honors His mercy. It says, "You are greater than my weakness." This confidence transforms failure into intimacy. Instead of self-accusation, the soul says, "Jesus, I fall again, but I trust you more." Instead of withdrawal, the soul remains present. Instead of discouragement, the soul rests. Jesus demands this confidence because heaven is a place of mercy fully received, and the soul must learn now how to receive mercy, not argue with it. Thérèse warned that false humility often hides fear. Saying I am unworthy while refusing mercy is not humility, it is resistance. True humility accepts forgiveness with simplicity. Ask yourself gently, how do you react after failure? Do you withdraw from God, or do you return to Him quickly? Your answer reveals whether confidence or fear guides your heart. Thérèse teaches that confidence keeps the soul light. It prevents the accumulation of guilt. It keeps love flowing. And most importantly, it allows God to act freely. God cannot pour mercy into a closed heart, but He overflows into a trusting one. After confidence in mercy, Jesus makes a seventh and deeply unifying demand upon the heart that desires heaven, a demand Saint Thérèse of Lisieux lived with serene surrender, complete abandonment to God's will. This abandonment is not dramatic resignation nor passive indifference. It is a loving rest of the soul in the certainty that God knows, loves, and chooses better than we ever could. Thérèse understood abandonment as the natural fruit of trust. She wrote, "I choose all that He wills," not because she understood everything, not because she felt secure, but because she trusted the heart of God more than her own understanding. Jesus demands abandonment because heaven is not reached through control. A controlling heart resists God. A surrendered heart receives Him. Abandonment begins where fear ends. It begins when the soul stops asking, "What will happen to me?" and begins to ask, "How can I love in what is happening?" Imagine Thérèse lying ill in the convent infirmary, her strength fading, her future unknown. She did not cling to plans. She did not bargain. She did not demand clarity. She rested. and in that resting her love grew freer, purer, lighter. Abandonment is the quiet decision to trust God's will, even when it feels hidden, delayed, or painful. It says, "I do not understand, but I trust. I do not control, but I surrender. I do not see, but I love." Jesus demands this posture because heaven is total union with God's will. The soul must learn now how to say yes, not only to joy, but to mystery. This does not mean approving suffering or denying pain. Thérèse never denied her suffering. She offered it. She placed it gently into God's hands and let Him transform it into love. Abandonment frees the soul from anxiety about outcomes. When you stop managing everything, peace enters. When you stop insisting, rest begins. Thérèse compared abandonment to sleeping in the arms of God, not unconscious but trusting. A child asleep does not fear the night because the parent remains near. Ask yourself quietly, where do you resist God's will? Where do you cling to control? Where do you fear letting go? These are the places where abandonment wants to grow. Jesus does not demand abandonment to break you. He demands it to free you. When the soul abandons itself, it stops fighting reality. It stops negotiating love. It stops measuring progress. And in that stillness, heaven draws near. Abandonment is not loss. It is belonging. When all these demands come together, truth, trust, small love, purity of intention, perseverance, confidence in mercy, and abandonment, Saint Thérèse of Lisieux reveals something astonishing. Jesus does not demand greatness to grant heaven. He demands a heart that becomes small enough to receive it. This is the final vision of the little way. Jesus does not ask for heroic strength. He does not ask for flawless virtue. He does not ask for visible success. He asks for a heart that is open, trusting, loving, and surrendered. Thérèse understood that heaven is not a distant reward for the elite, but the natural home of hearts that allow God to love them fully. She wrote with childlike certainty, "I am sure of heaven, not because I am worthy, but because He is merciful." This sentence gathers everything. Jesus demands a heart that stops negotiating love, a heart that stops measuring itself, a heart that stops trying to deserve what can only be received. Imagine again the image Thérèse loved most, a child before a loving father. The child does not bring a resume. She does not present achievements. She does not explain herself. She simply allows herself to be lifted. This is the heart Jesus demands, a heart that lets itself be carried. When truth is accepted, the heart no longer hides. When trust is chosen, fear loosens its grip. When love is lived in small things, daily life becomes sacred. When intention is purified, the soul grows light. When perseverance endures dryness, love matures. When mercy is trusted, despair loses power. When abandonment rests, peace takes root. And in that heart, quietly, gently, heaven already begins. Thérèse believed that heaven is not only a future place, but a present posture, a way of living now in God's tenderness. She lived heaven in the convent corridors, in unnoticed sacrifices, in silent trust, in childlike confidence. This is why her message remains so powerful. It removes fear from holiness. Jesus does not demand that you become someone else. He demands that you stop pretending. He does not demand that you rise alone. He demands that you allow Him to lift you. He does not demand that you impress Him. He demands that you trust Him. As this journey closes, let the demands of Jesus settle gently in your heart, not as pressure, but as invitation. They are not burdens. They are doorways. And every doorway leads to the same place, His heart, a heart that delights in smallness, a heart that overflows with mercy, a heart that longs to carry you all the way to heaven. Saint Thérèse of Lisieux would leave you with this quiet assurance. Heaven is not far. It is reached one small act of love at a time, one honest trust at a time, one surrendered heart at a time. And Jesus asks nothing more, because He already offers everything.